Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. Really excited today. I finally get to talk about Diablo 4. I get to talk about the beta that I've been fortunate enough to have access to for the last several days. This isn't the extent of my D4 experience, but my NDA prevents me from discussing anything that isn't specifically included in this beta. I'm hoping that we've had some announcements around about the time this video is going live once our embargo lifts. And yeah, this is basically a video talking about my experience from a solo casual perspective with a view to trying to get you pretty hyped for the game, because I think there's a lot of things really to get into, lots of things to enjoy, and I do think the community as a whole is probably going to like this. I think if you're a Diablo fan, you're probably going to be quite happy. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the feel of the game, I guess. So visual, style, look, sound, atmosphere, the thematic experience, I guess, of killing monsters in Sanctuary. With that in mind, we're going to talk about the combat mechanics, the open world. Basically, is the game fun? Is going to be that kind of segment. We'll talk a little bit about builds, so skills, items, how they work. Again, we can't talk about too much. The NDA is going to probably leach into that a little bit, but I'll give you a little bit of a flavour if I can. And then we're also going to have some discussion about the story, but no spoilers. Again, NDA prevents it anyway, and I'm not a jerk, so I wouldn't do that to you. But yeah, what it feels like, is it going to be something that is going to be enjoyable? And we'll talk a little bit about the classes that were available in this beta, which were the Barb, the Sorceress, and the Rogue. So if any of that sounds interesting, sit back and we'll go through it. Now, footage in the background, I'm afraid to say the only thing I'm allowed to use is the B-roll from the press kit. I would love to bring you my own gameplay, but that unfortunately is prohibited. But yeah, we'll do the best that we can. Now, full disclosure, I'm part of the Diablo content creator program, I guess, so I do get perks like being able to play games early. I do get into test realms and things like that. I'd like to think this doesn't impact my impression, but I think it would also be naive to say that it doesn't, so you just have to take that in mind. I'm a huge Diablo fan. I've played all 3 games, and I've been making content primarily on Diablo 3 for probably the last, I don't know, 3 years, something like that. I'm a very casual player. I've got a wife, I've got 2 kids. I have a day job, which unfortunately at the moment is incredibly busy because I work in football, but hopefully it's a relatable game experience. It's not somebody who's going to sit here and play the game 10 hours a day, every day. You know, those people come up with brilliant builds and discover wonderful things for us, but I don't think that's relatively reflective of the player base on the whole. So anywho, enough whiffle waffle, let's jump into it. Now, in terms of the feel, how this game feels visually, just the world is just brilliant. It's stunning, it's dark, it's gory, it's gritty, it's everything that they said they were going to bring back to the franchise. And if you think about it, Diablo 1 for me, I think was always a really dark and gritty experience. There was lots of dead bodies around and people skewered on stuff, demons. I remember shitting my pants playing that game. D2 I don't think was quite as dark as D1. I think there's been a lightening across the series, and that is definitely evidenced in D3, which has drawn a lot of criticism for being cartoony and that kind of thing. But we're going definitely back to D1. This is like, imagine if D1 was remade today, remastered with proper HD graphics. It is like that. There is lots of blood, there's lots of guts, there's lots of death, there's lots of dead people, people hanging from things, bodies everywhere. It's very, very nice. So visually, I think they've absolutely nailed it. They've gone for a dark, gothic, horror type of feel. You know, think like the Witcher series on Netflix, that kind of vibe. For the sound, obviously, one of the blogs for D4 recently said that they recorded loads of the sounds physically. They're actually there bashing stuff together. It does come across, you know, the game, just the sound, all of it is just absolutely fantastic. You are totally in the world of Sanctuary when you're playing it, and all this obviously adds to the atmosphere, the ambiance. It is just dark and dangerous world. You know, the beta, we could only do the one area, but there was still a variety of terrain in there. We've got some snow, we've got some more kind of like dungeony based stuff, so it is you know, a really good place to be. Now, the game is open world, so you can, if you wanted to, walk across the entire map of Sanctuary. You don't actually have to do any loading screens, and again, that does kind of help with the kind of experience I think that they're going for, which is that, look, Sanctuary is dangerous. You can be assaulted, killed, bashed, blammed by anything at any time. And ultimately, that's kind of how they want it. And the fact that you can walk around with no loading screens is pretty cool. But obviously, you are probably going to teleport from place to place using waypoints. And the game works pretty much kind of how you would expect. So in terms of the feel, I think putting yourself in there, if you do get the chance to try this beta, I'm sure you'll be really enjoying it. When the beta does come out, you'll jump in and it'll just feel like home, but it'll feel like dark as well, really, really gritty. In terms of is the game fun combat-wise, I'd say for the vast majority of it, definitely. We've got a lot of physical effects here, so I play pretty much mostly the Barbarian. I enjoyed the upheaval skill a lot. That's the one where you kick up the ground in front of you and smash it and knock enemies backwards with it. So lots of the combat mechanics are interactive. You really do feel like you're connecting, particularly with the Barb, with bludgeoning skills where you're just absolutely smashing something with massive weapons. So, the whole thing did feel really, really good. The Rogue, again, range class, felt really nice. It actually felt like your arrows were impacting. If you were using daggers, that felt like you were actually properly connecting and stabbing things. So again, maybe creeping into the feel section, but just in general, feeling fun for killing monsters was definitely there. If you could stick yourself in a randomly generated dungeon and just fight waves and waves and waves of these different mobs, and obviously again the beta was only up to level 25 one area, so not a huge variety of monsters. The whole game will of course have far more variety, but still lots of monsters, big elite champions, affixes, mods, bosses, mini bosses, world boss, all this stuff. Really was an awful lot of fun. So is it fun to play from a Diablo 3 perspective? Yes, 100%. I even think if you're a Diablo 2 player, you'll probably find it fun as well. Which of those two games is the combat most similar to? Well, of course the answer is Diablo 3. The fast-paced combat is something that Blizzard really want to nail with this game, and I think that they have done that pretty well. Now, monsters do respawn, so if you go from one area to another and you're milling about walking around, then new mobs will spawn. So it's not a case that you kill all the monsters and you're just running around with nothing to do. So that is pretty good as well. Dealing briefly with builds, again, there's not really much that we can say with the level cap of 25, and with that comes, I guess, a bit of an item cap. There weren't too many legendary items to be found in that playthrough in time, but basically it's a kind of mix between D2 and D3, I think, is looking how it's going to be for builds, because the skill tree is quite interesting. You put points in it and it advances along like a conveyor belt, and each major node you get to then maybe pick a skill off that node. Each skill can then be subcategorized, so you can pour points into the main skill, which will generally either make it do more damage, generate more resource, cost less resource, provide more healing, whatever it is. The base effect will be pumped up as you pour in points. You've then generally got to connect a node, which will allow, again, some kind of upgrade to the skill to make it better in some way. And then after that, for skills, you generally get a choice of two. You get to take it one way or the other. So it might be more damage to vulnerable enemies, it might be more damage to stunned enemies, it could be it costs less resource, these types of things. So it's a little bit like the rune system from Diablo 3, but you only pick one and then you would have to respec and go back. Now, I'm hoping that this gets expanded as the game grows, because I think a choice of two, really, I think I would like it a few more, maybe 3. For obviously in D3 we've got multiple runes to pick from, albeit quite a lot of the time there is only actually the one choice. You only end up picking one, which is generally the most damaging. So hopefully they do look more interesting than that. But it's going to be exciting to see how the different nodes of each particular skill pad out. Now, turning to items, something from Diablo 2 has come back, which I really, really love, which is plus skills. So, helms for Barb have got plus skills on them. Gloves for certain classes can have plus to skills on. And that, I think, really is a tremendous thing, because if you can only put 5 points into a skill to juice up its damage, getting a +1 to skills, and again, hopefully these will grow as the game goes, can add a lot of damage. It makes finding items interesting. It doesn't mean that you're always going to upgrade to that piece that you get that is a higher level or has got a higher base damage or a higher armor. You're going to be considering, look, do I want to use this because it's giving me maybe +1 to all defensive skills? So even though it's a worse item, for my barb, I get access to all the shouts or defensive skills or whatever it is, so maybe I'm going to use that. As I say, didn't really find many legendary items. Again, that's going to be because I guess the game's restricted to its very early stages, but we're going to have items that are going to interact with skills, and I'm sure we're going to have things that are going to spruce things up. So it does look like an interesting system to build. When you put enough points in, you unlock like a major kind of passive node for each particular class. So again, it is good to see the build progression. One thing dealing with this very quickly, just whilst it pops in my mind, is that as you progress around the map, as you unlock things, as you do challenges, do side quests, as you get strongholds unlocked and things like that, you do get what's called renown in an area, and that gives you extra skill points, extra potions, extra rewards, but those carry over to alternate classes. So when playing through the game on the second go through with the rogue, with the sork, we did have access to already skill points done, which again is I think pretty good. So you can power up your secondary characters. Just thought I'd mention that whilst it pops in. So overall, the builds, it looks, as I say, kind of like in between D2 and D3. So the respec cost up to 25 was negligible. You could play about with all the skills, which was really cool. But I think from what Rod Ferguson has said, that's not going to be the end game goal. They're going to have it so that you can't really respec. That's obviously something maybe to be debated in the community later, but early on you can have a little bit of a play of everything. It's not too costly to respec, which is pretty good. So you can find yourself some items that go with some skills, you can try them all out and work out which one is best for you. But it does look like there's going to be a degree of skill customization, and it does look like there's going to be an awful lot of things to do. And maybe you'll find some pog items when you play the game, and maybe it'll be the case that you can go Hammer of the Ancients rather than Upheaval or whatever it is. In terms of the story, which I guess was probably a big focus of this beta, really enjoyed it. Again, fitting with the feel and the thematic experience. It was very dark. It was like, there is no way on earth I would let my kids watch the cutscenes. They are brutal. They are shocking. So again, if you're a fan of horror, dark, violent things, gritty drama, that sort of stuff, I think you're going to like it. As I say, no spoilers. I'm not going to talk about anything about the story at all, because I think you will want to experience that for yourself. Voice acting was really good in the parts that were done. Some of it was still auto cue read, but the voice acting I think is going to be good. And let's face it, in a Diablo game, you're going to be hearing NPCs a lot. You're going to be hearing the main characters speak, so all that stuff is pretty good. In terms of classes, as I say, I mainly played Barb, just for a little bit of variety for myself personally. The Barb felt great to slap stuff. The weapon system on the Barb is really interesting. You get to have 4 weapons at a time. Depending on what skill you pick, well, the Barb will whip out a new weapon automatically, so you might be bludgeoning something and slapping it in the face with a 2-handed mace. Next thing, you're doing a slashing type skill, so you get out a big sword, or you might be using something where you going for the dual wield and you're whacking away with like a couple of axes or whatever it is. Really fluid and an awful lot of fun. For the Sork, that's obviously built all around elemental skills. We've got some auto casting of stuff. We've got, fire, ice, lightning. Just again, one of the things they're really trying to nail down is the fantasy, the thematic experience of playing this particular class. And you do feel like a Sork when you're playing a Sork. And the same for the Rogue. Again, quite clearly there's going to be 2 kind of main rogues that you can build. One will be a melee-based, knife-wielding one, which is more like an assassin. Or you can do the typical ranger, firing bows at range type thing. Again, we've got traps. We've got lots of the skills are returning from previous games. Frozen Orb, Meteor, Hammer of the Ancients, Wrath of the Berserker. But there are new ones as well. So there's enough, I think, to satisfy the nostalgia, the familiarity of maybe you're coming from Diablo 3, maybe you come from Diablo 2 Resurrected. You're going to feel at home, but it's not just a complete reskin. There are new skills, there are new mechanics and interactions. So overall, I played for a couple of hours most days. As I say, it was a little bit difficult to squeeze in more game time than that with the World Cup being on, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm really excited for the open beta. I kind of hope that we get access to all 5 classes. So the other 2 classes, of course, Necromancer and Druid, were not part of this beta. I'm hoping that maybe we can get a little bit further into the story in the beta. the one that's open. Maybe we can get to another area, but my personal opinion, and again this is just speculations, nothing I've been told, and if it was I probably wouldn't be allowed to release it, and you may well know by the time this video comes out, I think that the open beta will just basically be a rehash of this. It'll be up to level 25, it'll in essence be chapter 1 of the story, and in essence you'll get these 3 classes to have a little play around, to give you a taster, to hopefully entice you into the world of Sanctuary for years to come. Lots of positive stuff coming up about the game in terms of they want it to be a live service, they want things to be coming out every 3 months with content drops, new seasons, all sorts of good stuff I'm sure in the pipeline. So I'm personally pretty pumped for it. I enjoyed playing the game, I want to play it some more. Very excited for global release, which we're hoping will not be in too far into the future, shall we say. Right, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the footage in the background. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. Anybody who has any questions, you can stick them in the comments. If they don't breach the NDA, I will try and get to them. And I might well do a follow-up video with some of the things that I didn't necessarily enjoy too much about it, because obviously this has been a very positive video. This is why I think you should be excited for it, and maybe there were a few things that maybe I would personally like to change now that I found frustrating, so maybe that's a video for another day. Thank you for listening, thank you for staying tuned. I've been the Filthy Casual. Take it easy guys, peace.